Hello, this is a video on how to set up and administer the version of EmpowerDB that has been created for the CAWS North Dakota Coalition. Throughout this video, we're going to be talking, like I said, about how to set up and do administration things. It will be helpful for people who are just starting off, and also it would be helpful to have this video around for when maybe people in your future position will need to do things on the database. You can have them watch this video and kind of give them a quick training on and get them up to speed. The things that I'll be talking about will all be listed in the description of this video. So if you look at the bottom of this YouTube video, you'll see kind of this description with a table of contents. If you feel like I'm talking about something that you have absolutely zero interest in, you could potentially look through that table of contents, see what thing I'm talking about, and click on the timestamp for the next thing I'm talking about to jump right to that next thing. I will also be mentioning the most important things you need to know first and kind of gradually transitioning into the least important things you need to know. Potentially don't need to know at all. If you feel like you are done with hearing me talk and seeing me click on things, then you can just stop this video and potentially go back and watch the rest later if you like. All right, so the very first thing you need to know is your address that you're going to go to visit your version of EmpowerDB. Each organization has their own, address, URL, link that they access. Dana has a list of all those, and she should be forwarding those to you. But mostly they're pretty normal. EmpowerDB.com/ your organization's acronym, your organization's first few words. There was just a couple of you who had acronyms that were identical to ones that are already used by other EmpowerDB members, so we had to put an ND at the end of it. So again, check in with Dana for what that your acronym is supposed to be. And you will go to that address and you will see this page, EmpowerDB First Time Setup. Of course, if this is the very first time that you are accessing the database, it will take you to this page. So this is doing a couple of important things. I'm going to tell you what this is doing, but I still want you to go through here and read every single word that you're seeing because it is really, really important. Okay, the first thing that you're going to do is create an encryption key. All the text data that you enter into the system is encrypted with an encryption key that only your organization knows. The encryption key is unique to your organization, so it's not like every database user has their own key. It's unique to your organization, and all the database users will use the same encryption key. And we'll talk about things like passwords for users later. But in order to have a database encryption key that only you know, you need to be the one to generate it. So you're going to go here and you're going to press Generate Encryption Key, and then you're going to see a bunch of letters and numbers and symbols. You are not expected to remember this. You're going to want to write this down on a piece of paper that you can put in a locked safe somewhere, or you're going to write this down in a proper password manager. So a proper password manager is something like KeyPass, OnePass, LastPass, the real password manager, not an Excel file or a Word file that you just happen to put passwords on. All right, you don't want to do an Excel or Word file because that's really easy for those types of files to be searched on a computer. You never want to send this encryption key through email. You never want to send it to text message. Basically, all these kinds of means of digital transmission or saving of information, once you do it, you can never undo it. The way the technology is these days, information just doesn't go away. So you need to be really, really careful about where you save this key, who you give it to, where you write it down. The best thing is to write it down and lock it up. So you're going to click Generate Key. Sometimes when I generate a key, I take a look at it and I don't know. I don't like how some of this looks. I'm going to press it again, see what I get. Nope, don't like it. Don't like it. All right, I guess that one's fine. All right, so that's going to be my key, and I'm going to have to type it in now here, and this makes it so that, let's say I'm reading this wrong and I thought that was a parentheses going that way. it's going to say, oh, not a match. All right, so I would go back and like, oh, I thought that was a parenthesis that way, and now we can say, okay, yes, this is a match. So again, this makes it so that it's absolutely certain that what you're seeing here is what you're actually writing down somewhere else, and that you're reading this correctly. All right, I'm going to pause for a second so I can do what I'm telling you I've done and write this down. All right, so I've written this down on a piece of paper, and that step is done. Next thing I'm going to do is set up an administrator account. So you will be able to add as many users as you want, add, edit, disable, all the things. Any of them, anybody you create can be an administrator. There's no limits on any of that. We just need one person to get started off with, and then I'll show you next what to do for the rest. So I'm actually going to pause this again and fill this out because it would be boring. Let's see if there's anything I need to tell you about. Like email, you put your email. Username does not have to be the same as the email. Usually it's like mine would just be S Jenkins is my username. And password, can I just really encourage you to make a good password and not do all those password shortcuts that you always do everywhere else. It's totally fine if you want to do password shortcuts for your Netflix account, because really who cares if your Netflix account ever gets hacked. But this is really, really important stuff. Please resist the urge for yourself and for the rest of your staff to be breaking the password rules that you know you should not break, but you still break all the time. Okay, here we go. All right, so I filled out all those fields, and all I have to do is press Finish Setup. That's it. All right, you can now log into your version of EmpowerDB here. DVCC, I am using you as an example for this video. Don't worry, I will clear out everything that I've done afterwards. All right, so yep, we can click here, and now we can do the rest of the initial setup. So that's done setting up your system for its very first time use. But after we click here, we will need to do this create an access point process. So this is something that everybody who uses EmpowerDB from their computers will have to see, will have to go through the very first time they use the database on their computer. They should only ever have to do this one time per computer. If somebody is seeing the same screen again and again and again, it's because of one of like 3 really common situations that happen all, maybe one time per organization. Please click this help file and read the reasons why this is happening. I've got to tell you, it's been years since somebody got in touch with me about this issue, and it ended up being anything other than what's already in this help file, and I expect it to be years further, that it will always just continue to be what's in this help file. So please read there. So you have 2 different options for how to create an access point. The first option is what I recommend for most of the time. You're going to send an approval request to a database administrator. So this means someone at your organization, not EmpowerDB support. We can't help you with this because we don't have your encryption key. So you would send an approval request to a database administrator. That database administrator would, from another computer, sign into their version of EmpowerDB, see the request, approve it, the encryption key magically transfers from their computer to your computer. So this is the safest way because your encryption key is not out and about. It's still locked in that safe that I told you to lock it in. You don't need to worry about losing it or forgetting to put it back in, and that's why this is the best way. But we cannot do that this time because there is no database administrator that we can call upon to log into this database and approve our request, because we're the very first people to ever access this version of the database. So for the very first time you go through this process, you will have to do the second option. I am a database administrator. So we're going to click there. We are going to enter in a name for their computer. Don't feel like you have to get fancy here. Just imagine that your computer gets lost and you need to disable access to EmpowerDB from your computer. You go to a page in the database and you see a list of computer names. How are you going to distinguish this computer from all the other computers in the organization? Usually it's something as simple as Steven's laptop. something like that. You know, if there's multiple Stevens in the organization, you would say Stephen J's laptop. You know, whatever it takes to get that done. And then you are going to manually type in the encryption key that you just generated. I'm doing it now. It's so long. Okay, now that I've done that, create an access point. It has a fancy way to make sure that that's actually the key without actually knowing what the key was. And success. The access point has been successfully proved, and now we can log in. I will demonstrate the second way now. Yeah, let me just pause it and I can set up kind of how this would work. All right, I've got this ready. So I've got this window here in blue. We're pretending that this is one of your staff members. This is their computer. And then I've got this window here in red. We're pretending that this is you as a database administrator and you're on a whole other computer. Okay, so your staff is on this computer here and they have been told to click this first button. And then they are going to answer some questions to help form a name for their computer. So we're not giving them the option to type in, you know, Gene's laptop. We're making them say, I have a laptop and my name is Gene. Okay. And that's it. So now we just need to submit the request. And it's really important to know that this request will only last for 60 seconds. So before your staff click the submit request button, they need to call you on the phone. They need to shout down the hall, you know, something to get your attention to make sure that you are on your version of EmpowerDB and logged in and ready to deal with the fact that they are about to press this button. All right, 60 seconds, here we go. On your version of EmpowerDB, go on the home page, and when you reload, you will see that access point request Gene's laptop is trying to approve the request. You will then enter in your password to approve this request. So not your encryption key, just your password to say, yes, I am a database administrator and I approve for my encryption key to be passed from my computer to the other computer. So I've done that and it's going through the wires and boom. Okay, so success. The access point has been created on this computer, and we can now log in to EmpowerDB with the username and the password. So again, you set up the usernames and passwords. I do just want to point out that there is no I forgot my password link, and this is intentional. Those I forgot my password links are really insecure. It basically means that all you have to do is break into somebody's email account and you're able to break into everything else. So if somebody forgets their password, they've got to come to you and they've got to own up and say, I forgot my password, and you've got to go reset it for them. All right, so you'll do a username and your password and you will log in and you'll be at a home page that looks like this. I'm going to change the background color back to the blue that I like. It's not working. Did you know that you can change your background color? All right, we're going to go with this blue, I guess. All right, we're getting there. You can also change your background pattern. Put some snowscape. That's nice. By the way, there will be a separate video on how to use the database, and we will that will be a separate link. And that, you know, if things that I'm talking about now don't make sense to you, it's probably because they're addressed in that other video. That other video you can send to your people who will be using the system either now or people who come on at some later point. And that could help for them. It would definitely be helpful for you to watch the video, or you could just figure things out and train your staff however you want to train them. All right, so let's talk about creating new users. Screen size is a little too big, zoom out. On the top right of the home page is this staff list link. Click there, and here is the one staff person that I put in for the initial starting of using the system. So I can click on there and I can change the password. I can change that it's not an administrator. I can change which programs this person has access to, or I can put in something for their position, and like executive director or something like that. And that's not needed for anything. It's just kind of sometimes nice to have the position listed on the right page, right side of the staff list. Let's get somebody new in here. Add new staff. And you will enter in a first name, last name, email, username, password. Again, don't fall into the traps. What I say is ask your staff, what password should I set your account with? If they give you a really good password immediately, it's their password for Facebook and Twitter and everything else they use. So write that down and hack into their accounts later. And then tell them, hey, can you give me like an actual good password that we think of like unique to EmpowerDB? I know it's annoying, but this is really important. All right, please do it like this. And then there's some tips here that you can read. Click on this link and it'll tell you some more. What do I recommend? How to make good passwords that are memorable. Permission level, you have some choices here. Let's say you have like development staff that you want to only be able to run reports but not see client data. You can do that. Most of the people you add in will be a standard user. Program administrator can do things like approve access point requests and edit staff who are in their program and delete clients who are in that program. You can click this help file for review of all the different things, difference between program administrator and site administrator. Site administrator can do, if it can be done by a user, it can be done by site administrator, kind of the whole shebang. Again, you can add as many of these as you want. Let's say somebody leaves your organization, you would just change their permission level to inactive. You would not, there is no delete the staff person option. Again, that's intentional. Because we still kind of need a record that they existed and previously did things in the database. So let's do standard users. You can select which programs this person has access to. So let's say this is a staff person who's really only ever going to be dealing with the non-residential program and hotline calls. You could do that. Let's say there's a client in the database who is in the shelter and then or the transitional housing and only one of these. If I'm adding in a new client into the database and I only have these two permissions and the client is in some of the other programs, I'll be able to see that they exist when I'm adding a new client. It'll say, hey, somebody with this name in the shelter already exists, but that's it. So your staff will have to do some communicating with each other and make sure that they say, hey, can you check off shelter or can you check off non-residential program for Jane Doe? I see that she's in the shelter and I can't have access to her yet until you click off that button. We'll talk about that more in the other video. But it is good to know about that kind of restriction, that they can only see that just kind of somebody with that name exists and they can see nothing else about that client. All right, so you'd add a new staff and then they would get added to the staff list on this page. All right, next thing we want to talk about is the admin message board. So if I click here on the home page, admin message board, I see that there are two different message boards that you have access to. Potentially more might get added later, but updates and announcements. So this is showing kind of if there's a new thing that just got released with EmpowerDB or something that you need to know about, I will post it as an update in here. So you could either kind of look out on the home page for kind of a notice that there's unread messages in the admin message board, or you could set your notifications to subscribe to receive an email once something is new here. So you could say, send me an email when EmpowerDB support creates a new topic, or when EmpowerDB support says anything, or when anybody says anything. So kind of do encourage to have at least one administrator at each of each site to be subscribed with new topics by EmpowerDB support, just so you can kind of stay up to date with some of the new stuff that we've announced and the system is capable of doing. The other message board here, off-hour service disruptions. So let's say, every once in a while we have to do server maintenance, and the server will be shut down during off-hours times. I will, if it's possible, if I know that if it's planned kind of maintenance and not like emergency maintenance that has to be done right away, I will make an announcement about it here and kind of let people know what's going on. So if you have support staff who work off hours and will be disrupted by the system being down for a period of time, you might want to subscribe to this message board too, so that you can know about it ahead of time and alert them to this situation. Next thing we'll talk about is database documentation. So you're going to have questions about how to do certain things. I think the very first place that you should go to look is this place right here. So there's going to be different sections here. There's EmpowerDB administration, general use, and running reports. So we can take a look in here and we can see lots of different things that you might want to know how to do as an administrator. Especially want to point you to this quick skills video section. So we made like 1 to 2 minute videos that will show you just how to merge clients or just how to edit the name of an option. All right, those will be really helpful to you. And once you start getting into the world of reporting, these documentation files will be very helpful for you, particularly the variable query section here. There's a whole reporting training video on this and a whole reporting training video on the all-in-one reports and a reporting training video on the activities reports. All right, those seems like a lot, but those are all 3 really valuable things to be watching if you're starting into the world of running reports in the system. So please take a look in here to see if a question that you have is one of the common questions that we get asked, and we've made a documentation article about it already. Next on my list, let's say you have looked through here, can't find the answer, and you need some more help. Totally understandable. I think the way that this is going to work is that you will communicate your needs to Dana at the coalition and not me directly. That's usually the way things go, so that we can have, if Dana's getting the same question that she got last week, she can answer it right away. I don't have to spend the coalition's time and money to answering all these things, and Dana can just generally be the expert and kind of relay things to me. So when you are asking questions of her, there's something really important that you need to do. First, you need to be really clear about what's happening. Don't just say, I clicked on staff list and it's not working. Tell me, did you get an error? Make sure she knows. Did you get an error message? What did the error message say? Copy and paste the error message directly of what you saw. Did you, have to click here then there? Explain exactly what it was. The next thing is you always need to send a link to the page that you're on, that you're referencing, so that she can send that to me and then I can properly diagnose what's happening. So let's say you're trying to change the permission level of this person and you click save changes and it's not working. What you're going to do is you're going to copy this link. This is the link up here, the address that you're on of this page. You're going to go up here, copy it, and make sure you send that along with your request for help. Any single page ever that you're ever referencing when you're asking for help, you have to give a link. Otherwise, Dana's going to talk to me, say, somebody said this. I'm going to say, you need to send me a link. She's going to write you, say, you need to send a link. You have to send a link to her. She gets it back to me. It makes the process way, way longer. So please send those links to as many pages you think could possibly be relevant ahead of time so that the whole support process can be streamlined. All right, next on my list. Okay, so everybody has a list of programs that was created for them. These were based off of a list that Dana gave me. let's say you call your non-residential program something slightly different. That's fine. You don't have to stick with this wording. Maybe you call it your outreach program. What you can do, and this is something only a database administrator can do, this whole database administration section, only a site administrator can have access to. We're going to click there. We're going to click on programs, and I'm actually going to change the shelter. So maybe instead of shelter, you call it like Elm Street Shelter. Change the program name like that. All the other stuff you see for the settings, probably shouldn't change that. And by probably, I mean definitely. This has all been set, in a very particular way it's been decided, and this is the way it should be. So really the only thing you should be changing here is the name and also a list of rooms. So every residential program has one room by default, just kind of this generic shelter unit. We really recommend to people to keep track of which different rooms people are in for residential programs that have, set units or rooms. If it's a scattered site situation and, the locations people are in are different, every time there's no set locations, then you would just stick with this kind of general, shelter unit thing. Or if you want to not take my advice and not track by room, you can just stick with shelter unit. But if you do want to take my advice, you would come in here and say, all right, we have room 1. We also have room 2. And we also have room 3. All right, and go through and list out all the different rooms that you have. You can come back here later, add a new room, make an existing room inactive, whatever you need to do. But this can be really helpful for data quality checking. So, if you've got shelter with 8 rooms, you can look at a program list, at your program list here, and you can see, there won't be anything now because no clients in there, but you can see, okay, this person is in room 1, this person is in room 3. There's kind of a report called the occupancy report that will show you how people, whether your shelter rooms were filled or not filled during a certain time. And so the only way for that report to function properly is if you add in your list of rooms here. So I think it's really nice and doesn't add much, actually any extra burden on staff to do data input. Well, I guess the burden is if a client switches from one room to another, and I'll make sure to explain that situation and how to do that data entry once I make that video. All right, not going to save those changes. You get the point. Next thing on my list, editing the activities list. So here in Database Administration, I'll start back from the home page again. Database Administration, Activities Management, there's service types, referral types, resource types. Again, this will make more sense once you watch the general training video. You can actually edit this list of service types. So here I'll tell you about some of the common ways that you might want to edit this. The first is if you're looking through this list and you're saying law enforcement interview, we would never do that. I don't want that in my list. It was given to you because we kind of had to make a list that was applicable to everybody in the state and couldn't, ask around and see, is this relevant to you? No? Okay, yes, all right. So instead, we gave everybody the same list, and if you want, you can come here and you can say active, no. Get this off of my list. This is not something that we do. So it will still be here, down at the bottom, law enforcement interview. But when we go to the home page and try to add in a service, it won't show up. We can't choose that as an option because it is inactive. So maybe you want to do that as a change that you would do. You could potentially change the name slightly and say, we do this, but we call it police interview. Whatever you want to call this, you can call it that. I wouldn't go through here and say, we don't do law enforcement interview, but we do actually do consulting about medical needs, because then we're taking something that used to be called law enforcement interview and changing it dramatically, and all kind of past data that we had will now be changed. If we collected 10 services before as law enforcement interview, they'll be changed as this, and that's not what we want. So even though you don't have any data right now, it's probably good to not get in the habit of doing something like that. So definitely stay clear of changing the name of anything dramatically. Only change it if it's kind of changing a name to be about what it was before, but just worded differently. Other thing you can do is you can set change how the service converts to your different funders. So these are all assumptions that were made at the initial planning stages. But if you say, you know what, this is really on our stop report, we want this to be a language services. Whenever we do law enforcement interview, we want this to count on stop as language services. So you have control over how you want that to be. You can say only certain staff have access to doing this. So you can say, I only want people in the non-residential program to see this item in this list. This isn't saying that anytime law enforcement interview is done, only these staff can see that that was done. This is saying only these staff can see law enforcement interview in their list here and enter it into the database. It's a really important distinction to make there. So you can set groups of users to only have access to putting in this service type, or you can say only individual users can do it. But the default is all users. And the last thing you can do is, let's say this list is not complete and you do another thing and you want to be able to record it in the database. You can say add new service type here, enter in its name, and then say, when we do this, we want this to count on the stopper report is that, on the SAS report is that, FOCA report is this, and so on. We will have a couple other ones added later for the different North Dakota specific reports that we build in for you shortly. So those are how to change your service types. Very similar with the referral types. These were the ones that were given to you by the coalition, and you can add in your own referral type that you want if you want to track something new. Resource types. So these are things like, I gave somebody a bus voucher, I gave somebody a furniture item. And for this one, you kind of have a special thing you have to pick. You have to pick whether you're wanting to track the value of what's being given out, the quantity, or both the value and the quantity. So make sure you kind of think about whether what you're giving is something like a gas card, where that's really, I only really care about the value of what that is. I can't enter in the quantity, or clothes, where there's really no value to the clothes that you're, there is a value, but it's hard to say what it is. You just really only care about, like, I gave somebody 4 articles of clothing. The next activity type is violations. And this is something that you could edit, but I kind of don't want you to edit this. This is these how many of this? 10 violation types have been set up really specifically to match up with your 2 state. I forget which report they're from, but I'm sure you know from looking at this which ones they're for. So you should really never add in a new violation type or change. I guess you can change the name of it if you call it, something slightly different, but please don't do too much altering actually on the violation types. Group types you will want to do. Everybody has their own unique list of groups, so we couldn't, pre-fill this in for you. So you're going to want to come here and say, add a new group type. Maybe you want to put in like just support group. Maybe you want to do like, I don't know, women's support group, men's support group, all the different kind of groups that you put in, that you do, you can go in and add in a group type for it there. And then when you go to the home page and then groups, that will appear in your list. And finally, time spent options. So let's say you want to record things being done in 6-minute increments instead of just 5 or 10. You can come here and say, I want to do add 6 minutes, and you have to calculate how many hours 6 minutes is. Oh, it's easy, right? 0.1. Yeah, math. Okay, but again, you really probably shouldn't have to do that very often, if at all. We're making great progress. What's the next thing I have down on my list? Adding new variables. We are definitely now getting into the category of things you don't need to know about right away, but maybe you want to know about later, or maybe you are really eager to do database things. So when we add in a new client and we see, pick which program we're in, we get some fields that we can enter for them. These fields have all been set up for you because we know this is what you need for your funder reports. You cannot change these fields. You cannot edit these list of options. You cannot change the name. These are all controlled on my end. I can change them if Dana lets me know there's some sort of reason why it needs to be changed, but you cannot. And it's all really important to make that be the case so that all your funder reports can behave in a consistent way. What you can do is you can add in brand new questions. So let's come up with an example here. Marital status. Let's say you want to track marital status. That's not something that's on any of your funder reports, but that's something that you kind of care about and you want to have some sort of way to record that. Here's what you would do to do that. Go to Database Administration, Information Pages. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to decide, are we adding it to the client section, to the children of clients, to the data form section, here are your two different data forms, or to your staff section. Marital status, the example that I gave would be in your client section. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to edit the page structure. By the way, all these settings down here shouldn't need to touch those. These are, and by shouldn't need to, I mean please don't touch those things. They've all been set for you the way that they should be set. The only thing you should be doing is saying edit page structure, coming here, and you can, these are all the questions that you've been given that you can't change quite yet. You can reorder them. So let's say you kind of, I'd rather these be in a different place. You can do that if you really wanted to. But we can come in here and say, I want to add in a new variable. So we're going to click and drag that into there like that. Again, note that every time we want to add in a new variable, it has to be added to the all client data page first. The all client data page is a list of every variable that's in your organization's database, and from after it gets added there, then you would add it to your other intake pages, like your non-residential or your residential intake pages. So we're going to select what type of variable it is, and here's our options: a text variable, a number, a currency. These should all make sense about what these are. Do though really think about, I see a lot of people make bad choices about what this is. So like the most common one I see is people will choose select multiple when it should have been a select one. So marital status, someone will always only have one marital status. If it changes, let's say they were single and then now they're technically married, they get a divorce and they're back to single. Yes, it changes, but you don't need to have both of those things checked off. It's just, you just go through and you change the select one value to the new value. You will have in your revision history, look in the documentation for database documentation section more about revision history. I won't explain it in either of these videos, but you'll have in the revision history what somebody used to be. It's really unlikely that, if you think it's really unlikely that you'll need a history of how that multiple occurrences were previously checked off. You instead just want to say, okay, they can only at one time be one thing, so let's make it a select one variable. That was way more wordier than I wanted it to be. I hope it makes sense. Marital status, select one. I'm going to make a name for it. it's going to be called marital status. And the ID is marital status. There needs to be, every question that gets added needs to have kind of like a computer known ID to it. You'll never see this again, and it doesn't matter what it is. So the database will make something up for you. It doesn't matter what it is, except it just needs to be unique. So usually whatever the database makes up for you is fine. Okay, add variable. Oh, there is marital status somewhere in here. Okay, down there. I gotta come up with a different example. How about different example? All right. Sometimes I'm creative and sometimes I am not. So I've added in the new variable, and now since it's select one or select multiple, I can change the options by going there and saying this is a thing. So notice how I'm entering in the option names. Each name has a code associated with it. You can skip right over the code and the database will figure out a code for you. 3, who would have thought? So you can really let the database make up whatever codes you want. The only thing that I really suggest is if you're doing other, make it code 88, and unknown, make it code 99. This is kind of handy because if you would have made it 4 and then 5, and then later on you wanted to add a 6th thing, you would do this, and then you would move that and move it up here, and then you'd be like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 6, 4, 5, that doesn't look right, and you would be tempted to do this, and then that would be terrible for your data. You would never want to change the numerical code for a name. So it's just much better if you say 88, 99, and then later on when you're making up new things, code 5 is completely separate from your other and unknowns. So that's kind of the rule of thumb for that. Right? Again, you can add in new options later, but you cannot edit the options for variables that have been given to you. See how edit variable options is crossed off. All right, so here's a different example. We can now save changes to this page. Again, DVCC, don't worry, I will erase this later. Now we have to decide which intake page we want to put this on. Let's say we want it just on the non-residential intake page. It would come here, edit this page structure. And now in my unused variables and points in time section over here, I see that demographics different example is available. I can click and drag this in to where I want it. The next thing that I might want to do is I might want to set the importance/visibility. So you can control whether the database will remind users to fill in a certain piece of information and in what conditions it will be reminded of them, or whether a certain question will be visible or not. So by default, questions are not important, so staff will not be reminded to put that in. Notice how I'm not saying that this question would be required. Required would mean that staff would not be able to save the page unless it was filled in. I don't generally like doing that. It's instead important, which means it will be reminded to them to fill it in eventually. So by default, it's never not important and visible always, but we can say always important. So no matter what staff have to answer in this question, or get reminded to answer in this question. Or you can say only when a certain condition is met, or visible only when a certain condition is met. What's that condition? Maybe only if limited English proficiency has a specific value of yes. Save changes. By the way, all the things I'm talking about right now are discussed in those quick skill videos. So if you feel like I'm not giving a clear picture on a certain little piece, go look at those quick skills videos section and it shows more. All right, so then I would save changes to this information page, and now that question is in there. let's say I wanted it to be on the adult intake as well. I would come in and do that, have to put it in here as well. And I would have to repeat the steps I did before of importance and visibility. All right, you get the point. The same kind of thing works for the data forms. So let's say you wanted to track more things for hotline calls, then see the list of options here. It needs to be fixed. So let's say you wanted to add in extra questions here on a hotline call. For every hotline call that you take, you would have to first add in the question to all anonymous data, page structure, put it in there, and then you would have to, once it's there, come to this one and say, okay, now I'm taking this question and putting it in there. On some of the questions are within points in time blocks of information. So like incident abusers, I can go here. And so let's say you wanted to track new questions about type of abuse. That's not something that the coalition has given to you. You can add it to the point in time like that. And it behaves all similarly, but it's just a different way of getting to that information. All right. I think I'm almost done. Yes, I have just one more thing to tell you about. So we talked about the admin message board. You can set up, if you would like, an internal message board. So only users with program administrator and site administrator can see this. But I got the request a while back, and it sounded like a really good thing to have, to make it so that you can set up a message board amongst your staff so that various things can be communicated. So if a database site administrator can go here, go to internal message boards, and create a new message board. So you might want to call this like shelter happenings, and then say only people in the shelter have access to this message board. And on this one, you can say any post, any message that gets posted in this message board deleted after 2 weeks, or whatever you want it to be. All right, and then I'll just do it. Add a new board. So that's there. And now on our home page, we have internal message board, and I have access to this message board, so I can go to shelter happenings. And just the same as the admin message board, you can set up email notifications to say, okay, send me an email when somebody creates a new topic in this message board, or when a new topic is created, plus anybody replies to anything. So every user can go in and do that. You cannot set up, let's say you want everybody in your shelter to get those email notifications. There's no automatic way to do it. They all have to go and manually register themselves. You come here, add a new topic, and post something new. Again, this will only ever be seen by your organization. It gets encrypted with your site's encryption key, so it's appropriate for confidential information. Okay, so that's it for this admin training video. I hope it was helpful to you. And again, you'll want to check out that general training video. Maybe hear my baby crying in the background, woke up from a nap. She couldn't have waited 2 weeks longer. Oh boy, this is life working from home. Okay, I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope everything goes well in your use of the database.